Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to show you how to replace the front wheel bearings in a Porsche 914. Amazingly, there are still cars on the road with their original wheel bearings, and this has got to change. You can tell if the bearings need replacement if you put the car up on a lift and you can move the wheel when you grab it like that, or you might hear some noise as you're driving. If you're going to be taking the hub off to replace the rotor or deal with the brakes, you might as well replace the wheel bearings. They're not that expensive. It's pretty simple to do, and at least you'll know you've got fresh bearings in there. Let's get started. To replace the front wheel bearings, obviously we need to access them. So to do that, we have to take the dust cover off here, which is sometimes really stuck on. So you have to work your way around the edge here. Just be patient, maybe even a little bit of heat. I've pre-loosened this so I can show you here that this is the retaining clamp nut, which has an Allen socket or hex socket at the top or the side, wherever it happens to be. And you loosen that up and then you spin this off. Now I've pre-loosened this because I'm shooting with one hand. And one of the interesting things is on the left side, it's the opposite thread. So righty loosey, lefty tighty. And on the right side, it's the way you expect it to be. So we take that off, and then inside here is a washer which holds the front bearing in. So we pull that washer off, and sometimes the front bearing comes with it, like in this case. So we have the washer and the front bearing and the clamp nut. We'll put those on the bench so we don't lose them. What's inside there is a race that's kind of got an angle. It's wider at the top than it is at the bottom. I cut a notch in this one because I use it to press the new ones in, and with this notch it can easily pull it out once we're done. I'll show you that later. But it's not a difficult job at all. There is a rubber seal in the back here, which you can use a seal puller to pull, but the easiest way is to just put a screwdriver in here and pop it out. There you go. It'll fling, and sometimes they're a little bit more crusty and stuck in there, but you can see there's a pretty decent lip that you can get under with the screwdriver here. And that gives us access to the rear bearing, the rear of the front, that is. And this isn't not in really bad shape, but since I don't know when the previous owners last did the bearings, I'm just doing them now because they're not expensive and really easy, especially since I have my front suspension apart. Now to get the races out, you'll see inside the opening here, there's a little notch on that side and one exactly on the opposite side. And what we're just going to do is bang a screwdriver on this to remove the front race. I can't do that with one hand, so you'll have to trust me. Once you've gotten the bearing pushed down till it can't go anymore, it hits the bench. You put it in a vise so that creates a little bit of space there, and I can pound it the rest of the way. Alright, I just faked it falling into my hands, but you get the idea. So here it is, here's the race, and there's actually a little bit of scoring I can see. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but good thing I'm replacing it. To get the rear bearing out, I'm going to find the notches for that, which are directly below the front ones, as you can see. And same trick, just gonna hit it with a screwdriver, balancing the force on either side until it comes out. I won't need to put it in the vise because there's enough free space underneath here for the bearing race to fall straight down. I'll just make sure that I'm in the notch here and give it some wraps. That should be the final blows. And look, there's the race right underneath. And we'll inspect it, and also the hub. Make sure we're nice and clean with no burrs or anything weird in here. And then we'll get ready to put the new bearings in. I'm going to clean the bore now with some just brake cleaner. I want to get all the old grease out of there. Just going to do the rough cleaning with this and then use a cleaner towel
as I get closer to the end for final cleaning. You want these bores to be hospital clean, at least where the races sit, so they go in smoothly and they seat properly. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Got to get a little bit into these corners, but we'll finish that off and then put the race in. I'll take a little smear of grease and just grease the inside of this a little bit. And put about, shop manual says, about 1.25 ounces of grease into the actual bore of the wheel. Let's clean this up a little bit before we press the race in. Here's the kit I got, which contains the front and rear races and bearings, and also the seal that goes onto the top. And it comes also with some grease, but not really enough grease to do the whole job, and I prefer not to mix greases, so you can see what's going on in there. Also, the dust cap that comes with this particular kit is not the right size. I have to reuse the old dust cap. But 713-6102-300. That's the number of this kit. Alright, there's the race and the bearing. Definitely want to keep these clean. So try not to handle them really until it's time. And it's time for the race. So what we're going to do is, you'll see that it's got a taper in it, and we want the smaller side down to the bottom. And it will sit kind of in there to get it started. And then what I've done is I've taken an old race and just cut a piece out of it, which I'm going to use as a driver on top of this. Now this piece cut out means that I can just pull this out super easy once it's done. Alright, so I'm going to give this a few wraps. Once it gets started, flip this over to put the thin side down, which means it'll sit in this little pit a little bit easier and won't move as I drive it home. And just work your way around. Don't hit your hand. Show you what's going on in there as I drive it home. Now I'm using a soft hammer here because I just don't want to ruin the edge of the race. Okay, I believe that's in. And now, see, this thing pops right out because I have that little relief. Now I'll double check all the way around, make sure that it's seated, and it looks like it is. So the rear race is in. And the front race, same deal. I like to keep everything clean, leave everything on that plastic. Here's the race itself. And what I'm going to do is take a bit of a smear, like I did before, and just give it a little bit of help in the inside here. Shop manual calls for this. You don't really need it, but makes things go a little bit simpler. So here we go. So again, there's the taper, and the narrow side goes down. And this will sit in a little bit because there's a relief, as you can see. Make sure that it's nice and solid to start. And then, I'm going to get this going. I'm going to use a soft edge hammer, a rubber mallet, to make sure that I'm not damaging anything. And then, I have a smaller race from the old bearing, which I cut that relief in. And I'm going to use it thin side down so that it mates. Nothing like one-handed. Here are the sound changed. That means it's home. And a few more bonk bonks on the head to make good. You don't really need any force really at all to get this out. Just kind of gently lift it. And it's pretty much there. There it is. So, we're all in. Now, you can put the bearing in the back. You know what they say about cleanliness, and it's really important with the bearings that you don't get any dirt in here. So, new pair of gloves, and then we're going to pack the grease in the bearing here. And we do that with just a generous amount of grease that we're going to just put in your hand, really, and just kind of force it into the bearing. You want to just keep squeezing it, working it around until you see it ooze through the channels here. You'll know when you're done, when all the grease in your hand is no longer in your hand and you can see things oozing out of the bearing. So now that our bearing is greased, we're going to drop it into the race. A little bit more grease for good measure. And there it is. Seat's nice and solid. And now we just need to put the seal on top. And that's right here. Fresh and clean. Just kind of wipe this off a little bit. And it lays pretty flat. You can almost push it in with your hand. But I'll use my handy mallet to get everything. That's it. Rear bearing's done. We're going to do the front bearing on the car. I'm going to clean the spindle here. The spindle looks pretty good. I mean, it's 40 plus years old, but I don't feel anything weird. Doesn't seem to be any scoring. We're ready to reinstall. Okay, same drill. Make sure you've got clean gloves, and a glop of grease goes in there, or a couple glops. And now we're just going to work it in to the bearing. There are also presses that you can get, like little plastic bearing packers, for like under 10 bucks on Amazon. But since I really don't do that many bearings, I figure I'd just use my hands, and it's kind of fun anyway, just packing all the grease in. And again, you want to squeeze it. You want to make sure it gets inside the bearing, not just around the bearing. Now what I'm going to do is put rub on. The seat's nice. You can feel the bearing in there. Now comes the front bearing. Again, you want to make sure your hands are really clean and make sure that there's nothing doesn't look right in there, so that pops right in. And then the flat washer with the lock on it. And then remember, on this one it's lefty tighty, which is really kind of hard to get used to, but you don't have to do it that much. Now to tighten it, I have a 25mm wrench here, which is not really made to like treat this as a nut, just get a little bit more leverage on it. And this washer should just move a little bit with pressure, and that's exactly what we want. Here's a close-up of what you're looking for with the washer. See how it just moves a little bit with force? Just a little, see? We'll now tighten up the clamp. Now another really important part of the job is to make sure that you clean the rotor surface, because you see there's grease there. You will get grease kind of everywhere when you're doing the hubs. Don't leave grease on the hub, because then it'll get into your brake pads, and well, grease and brake pads don't get along well. Make sure you get the back side of the rotor too, which you can get from the caliper hole. Now that everything is tight, the only thing remaining is to pack this area with more grease.
and put the dust cap on. But I don't want to do that just yet. I want to take a drive around the block, then bring it back, put it back up on the lift, and make sure that this space for the bearing is correct with this washer, because as things drive it can loosen up a little bit. Then put the dust cap back on and have somebody else fight to get it off next time.